Hello, in this video we're going to look at three of the documents of Pope Francis to illustrate his take on how we deal with justice and peace matters in the world today. They are Evangelii Gaudium, Laudato and Fratelli Tutti. So the first one we're looking at is Evangelii Gaudium, the joy of the gospel, which is really about repairing the church. Evangelii Gaudium is not officially part of the Catholic social teaching canon of Pope Francis, as he acknowledges, but as is his habit, all his writings highlight the world of the poor. Evangelii Gaudium is an apostolic exhortation, which by its very nature urges Catholics to apply the doctrine contained in the document in the world. Evangelii Gaudium concerns how to preach the gospel to change the world, urging the Church to become more mission-oriented. The Pope excoriates those who think that religion should be confined to the private sphere, insisting that both Christian preaching and life are meant to have an impact on the society. He subtly alters in small but significant ways some of the norms of Catholic social teaching. Pope Francis provides his own definition of solidarity as being, quote, the creation of a new mindset which thinks in terms of community and the priority of the life of all over the appropriation of goods by the few, unquote, and drops the word preferential from the Catholic social teaching principle of the preferential option for the poor. He states clearly that the option for the poor is primarily a theological category rather than a cultural, sociological, political or philosophical one, urging the faithful to work for the social inclusion of the poor. Lastly, it is the people of God who evangelize, not just the ordained. This new evangelization rooted in scripture and tradition is not conversion, but the building up of a more human and just society for all, the task of all who call themselves Catholic. The passion displayed in this apostolic exhortation, particularly in relation to the poor, is taken up in relation to the planet, the poor, and all creatures in Laudato Si. And there we see the Pope talking about the repairing of the planet. All post-conciliar popes have mentioned the need for stewardship of the planet and have given warnings about the degradation of the earth. Pope Francis is, however, the first to devote a whole encyclical to the topic, as the urgency for action is now critical to save, as he calls it, our common home. To underline this urgency, he refers to the need for a bold cultural revolution and condemns the earth for looking like, quote, an immense pile of filth, unquote. He encourages a move towards an ecological conversion, stressing the connection between God and all beings and how we should listen to the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor to effect real change in our attitudes and actions towards our planet. Laudato Si is not just addressed to all men and women of goodwill, as has been the practice since Pope John the 23rd's Pacem in Terris, but to, quote, every person who lives on this planet. He throws out a call to bring the whole human family together to seek a sustainable and integral development. It should be remembered that an encyclical is meant for the faithful to study, but also to act on. The focus of Laudato Si is not just on the degradation of nature, but the effect of climate change on the poorest, and this becomes a major theme throughout the encyclical. It's not just a matter of the lack of resources to combat the challenges of poverty, but of excluding the poor from the benefits of the goods of creation. The Pope critiques an unthinking reliance on market forces with the constant obsession of chasing money, and stresses the effect of technologies used in extractive industries on the climate, but also on the lives of human beings. He tries to redefine our notion of what progress means and points to the unsustainability of constant economic growth and ultimately the neoliberal model of capitalism. The Pope offers an approach to creation which links all people not only with care for the earth, but their own political and economic decision-making, as well as personal decisions about consumption and production, which have an effect on the health of the planet. He links the so-called magical conceptions of the market, privileging profit over the poor, with the abuse of the environment. He stresses the connection between a heedless pursuit of money that sets aside the interests of the marginalised on the one hand and the ruination of the planet on the other. He explores the concept of the common good to replace such selfishness and points out to those who might regard themselves as green that they cannot care for the planet without tenderness, compassion, and concern for our fellow human beings. Laudato Si has had an immense influence on Catholics, people of other faiths, and the secular world, and is the centrepiece of a major action by the Dicastery for the promotion of integral human development, the Laudato Si Action Platform, which we can all sign up to. Repairing Humanity, a look at Fratelli Tutti. This is the last document I want to look at, and it concerns fraternity and social friendship. And if Laudato Si says that everything is connected, Fratelli Tutti says that everyone is connected. Pope Francis puts forward his fundamental vision that, quote, the spiritual stature of a person's life must be measured by love. That love must extend beyond family and friends to encompass the whole world, and especially those who suffer most in it. We must cultivate a social friendship where the God-given dignity of every person is acknowledged. It's also an encyclical that was crafted during the COVID pandemic. The Pope says that the pandemic has shown that, quote, not everything can be resolved by market freedom. We must put human dignity back at the centre, unquote. He calls for a better kind of politics which promotes the common good. This can only be done through an authentic dialogue, by which he means that people should not use social media to insult or demean, but reach a social consensus by respecting one another. He calls for the recovery of kindness, which is an antidote to indifference. He talks eloquently about the role of religion in building fraternity and emphasises interreligious dialogue and promotes kindness as a political attitude. The Pope says, quote, precisely because kindness entails esteem and respect for others, once kindness becomes a culture within society, it transforms lifestyles, relationships, and the ways ideas are discussed and compared. This leads to a culture of encounter. It also leads to a just organising of society. The Pope says, it is an equally indispensable act of love to strive to organise and structure society so that one's neighbour will not find him or herself in poverty. He continues, it's an act of charity to assist someone suffering, but it's also an act of charity to work to change the social conditions that caused his or her suffering in the first place. Fans of Pope Francis refer to the Francis effect, the change that comes over people when they hear him speak or read his writings. And there is an authenticity about the man and his message, and his adherence both to the gospel and the way it was interpreted through the Second Vatican Council is crystal clear. It points to an ecclesiogenesis, a fancy word of saying a new way of being church, and going on that road of good that the whole human family is called to travel. In the final video, we'll look at what the application of the teaching of Pope Francis looks like. Thank you.